So before we jump into this video, I do want to say a big thank you to Hasselblad for sending me the X2D and for sponsoring this video. This is the Hasselblad X2D 100C, a medium format digital camera tuned for exceptional image quality. This is my first time shooting with a Hasselblad camera and also my first time shooting with a medium format digital camera. So this review is going to be coming from the perspective of somebody who is new to the Hasselblad system and somebody who's used to shooting on APS-C and full frame digital cameras. Whether it's portraits, beautiful landscapes, fashion photography, or fine art photography, I think the X2D is suited to the photographer who really has the liberty to take the time when crafting their images and to really nail that perfect shot that they had in their mind, rather than haphazardly rushing through 2,000 frames and picking the best one when you get back to the office. So simply put, the medium format sensor gives you the area to have really high resolution images, but at the same time have amazing light gathering capabilities. It also allows for really beautiful shallow out of focus backgrounds. Even when shooting at slightly smaller apertures like f3.5, f4, you still get that really beautiful 3D pop from your images. Now, I'm not the most technical photographer out there, nor do I put sharpness and resolution at the absolute #1 priority when it comes to cameras. But despite this, I think there is just something magical about the look of medium format images.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah, that's really nice. Now we're talking Hasselblad, so I know that the resolution and the sharpness and the image quality is going to be the headline feature of this camera. But as someone who really appreciates and values user experience and design in a camera body, I wanted to talk about the amazing work that Hasselblad has done in designing this camera. So in my testing of the X2D, I gave the camera to a few of my photographer friends, and most of their reactions were fairly similar. The most common reactions were how the camera actually felt in the hand, the size, and just how beautiful this LCD on the back looks, and then also the simplicity and how clean the user interface is. So coming from a Sony camera, the menu system in this camera is a breath of fresh air. I can't tell you how nice it is to pick up a camera and intuitively know where things are in the settings. Because of that quite large sensor inside, most medium format cameras are a little bit larger than their full frame counterparts, and I think Hasselblad has done a really good job of using this extra area and this real estate to really upgrade this screen. And this is definitely the biggest screen I have ever experienced on a digital camera. It does make it really easy to compose your images, and because of that extra size, all of the important information overlays on the screen don't clutter up your view of the image that you're trying to compose. The experience is very much similar to a smartphone. It's very intuitive. Yes, you are using the touch screen quite a bit more than other cameras, but once you get used to it, it's actually quite hard to go without. And looking at a smaller screen after using this camera, it kind of makes me appreciate this camera even more. Let's not forget the EVF as well. It's definitely something that I used extensively, and I really enjoyed using the EVF. It's really nice and bright and clear. Another thing that's unique as well is they also have this color display up on the top of the camera. It's quite large and it's really easy to read the settings here. I just love the way that it's laid out. It's really nice to quickly at a glance see your settings, how much space you have left on the card, and also your battery percentage. As someone who has quite large hands, holding this camera was really, really satisfying. So this is the side of the camera. If you can see that, the grip actually slopes away from your body, which I find is super ergonomic because most cameras, the grip at the back, it has this kind of very square, boxy kind of design, and that area sort of digs into your palm. It honestly feels like you're holding an axe handle. It's like just super ergonomic, which I really love.
Yeah, it's cool. Just sort of like look up towards those windows. Yeah, I love that.
Ultimately, I want a camera that has good image quality, but doesn't feel like an obstacle or something that gets in the way of creating great images. If you look at the back of the camera, it does have quite a large area, but when you look at it sort of from a side profile, it is quite thin, so it doesn't feel unwieldy in your hand. If I just take the lens off here, probably get a better picture of it. It is actually quite thin. I think that sort of helps to bring down the weight of the camera overall as well. I don't want to leave this exposed for too long, but there you can see the beautiful medium format sensor. So massive. In terms of the build, it is made completely out of metal and it really feels super premium and solid, and there's also weather sealing throughout the body. The card and the port doors feel super premium to open and close as well. They're not rubber dangly things like on some other cameras. They're also made out of metal and they're mounted on a sort of spring so that they pop out and they stay out of the way when you're installing memory or plugging the camera in to charge the battery. The battery is also part of the body and it sits flush with the camera, which is really nice as well. So as you might have already gathered, the camera is very different in many ways. And one of the other ways this camera differs from most others out there, and something that I find really cool, is that it actually has an internal 1TB SSD. And that means that you most likely never need to buy external memory or remember a CF card when you go out to a shoot, because this 1TB SSD can store over 4,000 16-bit raw images. It does, however, have a CF Express Type B slot if you do want to add extra memory. So I believe that the camera has a USB 3.1 port, and this is used for charging the battery in the camera, but then also for offloading images. And because of the speed of that port, it means that you can really offload images super quickly if you're backing up to another SSD drive. I was able to offload around 2,000 images to my Samsung T7 drive in just a couple of minutes. So that was really, really nice. You might have noticed the HNCS label that I've been putting next to each of the straight out of camera images in this video so far. HNCS stands for Hasselblad Natural Color Solution. Rather than having a range of standard color profiles to choose from, Hasselblad have come up with one color profile which serves as a very natural, consistent base, which I find very pleasing. This is the default color rendering in the Hasselblad Focus app. And from there, you can either leave it as is straight out of camera or push the color and tone in any which way you would like, taking advantage of that 16-bit color. All the lenses have a built-in leaf shutter. So there is no shutter inside the body, only an electronic shutter. Leaf shutters allow for distortion-free capture, and they don't suffer from the same shutter speed limitations as focal plane shutters when it comes to flash photography. And this means that you can use really high shutter speeds with flash, rather than being limited to 1/250th of a second or using high-speed sync. And it gives you a lot more control over your ambient light and your flash power when you're shooting with a flash. So since the X2D came out, there have been a number of firmware updates, and I actually had early access to firmware 3.0, and the most notable feature that they have added is face recognition autofocus. And I found this extremely useful for shooting portraits out in the field. It locks onto the face really well, and it's able to discern facial features from quite a long distance away. Even though it isn't an eye tracking system, I found that it pretty much nailed focus on the eye almost every time in good light. Being medium format, you do have very shallow depth of field naturally, so having a reliable face recognition autofocus that gets it right is actually crucial. I will say, you do have to be patient with this camera in lower contrast situations, as it isn't a 100% hit rate on the focus. But as I said earlier, this is not a camera that is going to be suited for photojournalism or live events. It's a camera system for creating art, and definitely benefits from situations where, as a photographer, you can take your time and get your images right. It's not a camera that's going to be able to burn through 30 frames per second and fill up an SD card in 2.5 seconds. I also loved that when a face wasn't detected in the frame, it reverted to the default of the single autofocus point in the center. I found that on other cameras, those are my two main methods of focusing. I either want to use face and eye tracking or the single focus point in the center. As a photographer, I do enjoy a little more of a fast-paced working style, so it did take me a little while getting used to the X2D, as it is a little bit of a slower experience. But I did end up welcoming this change in style because it meant that I shot way less photos on my portrait shoot than I usually would. But it also didn't mean that I had less keepers overall. It just meant that I was slowing down a little bit and trying to get the images right straight out of camera. This camera does not have a video mode, so it is not a camera for hybrid shooters. A downside for some creators, but I would argue that if you're in the market for a camera like this, you're probably not split between photography and video on your professional shoots. I really love the LCD on this camera, but one way I think that they could improve on future iterations of this camera is to actually allow it to tilt down so you can see the screen when shooting above your head. It does tilt out for shooting low angles, but I wish it did tilt the other way for higher angle shots as well. And same thing goes for the portrait orientation too. I wish the screen did tilt out this way for portrait so you can shoot above and below eye level. So I want to say a massive thank you to Hasselblad for sending me out this camera system, allowing me to try it out and make a review for you guys on my channel. Let me know what you guys thought of the images coming out of the X2D. I'd be really interested to hear what you guys think, and also if you have any questions about the camera or any features that I didn't cover in this video, leave them down in the comments section below and I'll try my best to answer you there. So thanks once again guys for joining me, and I will see you all in the next video.